Zelete, thank you for your love and support. I appreciate you all. Many times when big countries talk about foreign policy, they use fancy words about peace and partnership. But when defense bosses sit down behind closed doors with politicians, they drop the nice language. They talk about real power, money, and control. Recently, in a meeting at the French Parliament, the head of a French private security company called GEOS stood up to give a plan to French politicians. He sat alongside other leaders from private defense companies. His plan was simple: how France can keep its power in Africa after getting kicked out of countries like Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso. For many years, France kept its control by sending soldiers in uniform with big guns and military trucks. But people in the Sahel got tired of it. The people stood up, protested, and forced the French army to leave. The speaker in the video admitted that having soldiers in uniform on the ground does not work anymore because it makes local people angry and cause big protests. So, what is their new plan? They are not planning to leave Africa alone. Instead, they want to change how they operate. They want to hide their presence. Instead of sending official French soldiers, they want to use private security companies. When a country sends its official army, everybody sees it and everybody protests. But when a private company does the work, nobody pays attention. The private companies do not wear official French military uniforms, but they still do the same job for the French government.
I put on my Deputy Chief of Operations uniform from the Army General Staff. What support could GEOS provide to the French strategy? First, I think we need to try to characterize, obviously it will be simplistic, but the Africas, because there is not just one Africa, and so I see four. I see a first Africa, it's West Africa, and the Sahel is the Africa of risks and the Africa of strategic frictions with our competitors. It's the one from which France is being expelled. There is a second Africa, I won't say it's Central Africa, it's the Africa of the center, and it's the Africa of francophonie and strategic resources. We have just discovered incredible deposits of rare earths and rare minerals in Zimbabwe. And the Chinese are already there, the Russians are advancing. I don't think French companies have yet considered their involvement in Zimbabwe. There is then a third Africa, which is Southern Africa. I think it is the Africa of business. And among the largest economies, there is obviously South Africa. So it's rather that area that should be prioritized. And then finally, there is East Africa. And for me, East Africa is the Africa of trade flows between the Mozambique Channel, the Red Sea, between those lines, and those are the priorities. Regarding West Africa, and I will focus on that since I don't have much legitimacy for the other Africas, for West Africa, I think that from a macro perspective, the issue is very different from one that would be simply security related or economic. What is happening in West Africa is an entire region of Africa that is shifting and could become the leverage for our competitors, particularly Russia, to impose a model of society that is not ours. That's what's happening. It's not just about security. And we see this kind of powder trail. We now see the Russians who have arrived in Chad, who are in Burkina, who are in Niger, who may soon be in Senegal. We know they had expressed their intention to extend towards Côte d'Ivoire. For me, that's somewhat the issue. So if our country intends to continue to have weight or maintain some form of influence in that area, it is clear that it will not appear in physical fields. I think that the military option or military presence or military visibility will no longer be a criterion to develop this influence. I think it will rely on intangible fields. It's in this area that we need to invest, and overall, to summarize, we need to shift from a demonstrative and loud strategy to a discrete and access-based strategy. In my opinion, that's the challenge. and all the actors you have gathered here, but many others as well, should participate in this strategy if it is indeed our strategy. To implement this, it requires 3 or 4 conditions. First, the state must have a network of trusted companies. And here, we need to determine that. What are the criteria? How do we determine them? How do we validate it? Should it be legalized? Is it simply interpersonal? But in any case, there is a topic there. The second is that the state has the capacity or has its hands a bit more open regarding the outsourcing capabilities, the transfer of a certain number of sovereign actions. We need to find the right dividing line towards private companies. I know this is already the case, notably for DCI and Expertise France, but this needs to be reviewed as a whole. The third thing, as was said, is that ultimately we need to move away from a supply-driven logic to a demand-driven logic. And in this area, we also need to be able to generate demand. We shouldn't wait for it. We need to generate it. But in any case, we need to move away from the logic of only providing left truck tires if they need a left and a right tire. It's somewhat what happened for a while. And finally, and this is also one of the conclusions that was mentioned, we need to have a structure that is capable of integrating numerous capabilities. I think one of the topics of influence, one of the topics of developing capabilities is not so much the professions. We have people who are very good in their professions. It's the ability to coordinate all that. The solution to influence, the solution to crises is not so much in the equipment, not so much in the expertise, but in the ability to coordinate. That's what determines effectiveness, and that's where we need to go. One last word to say, what we could do or how we could try to experiment with that. I asked myself the question when I saw the willingness or political decision to significantly reduce our workforce. Pre-positioned overseas. I thought to myself, what could we do to illustrate what I just said? Well, here's what we could do. One could be asked, obviously this is not an offer, but one could be asked for the entire Port Boué, Port, Abidjan, Airport, and Lomé North to be transformed into a multinational camp for operational readiness of contingents that will participate in operations, whether they are African contingents or European contingents. Here's what we could do. And in that area, how do we reduce the visibility of a project like that? Well, it's extremely simple. GEOS did it in Afghanistan. GEOS did it in Mali to ensure the operation and life of a camp. Then DCI is capable of providing training without specifically wearing French uniforms. Expertise France is capable of doing the rest. And here we have a project, as soon as the Africans would request it, that would first be integrated with everything we are capable of doing on mines, on medical training, on military training, on the delivery of equipment. We can go further, we should go further. This integrator should be able to cover the range from humanitarian to military training, from cultural to training people at the Lomé Nord camp, which is a fairly well-known shooting range. It's somewhat like that I see as the capacity for integration. It's somewhat like that I see the way our country could maintain a form of influence in Africa, while obviously respecting and following the instructions that have been given to us or that have been given by the political authority. There you go. That's a particular example. I think we can multiply them as much as we want. We just need to want to do something like that. Mr. Vice President, I'm done. Thank you.
In the video, the speaker gave a clear example of how to do this in Ivory Coast. He proposed taking over big locations like the port in Abidjan, the airport, a large military base. He wants private companies to turn these places into big training camps. Private companies will run the camps, train fighters, and handle logistics without looking like an occupying army. He also talked about natural resources. He pointed to places like Zimbabwe where huge deposits of valuable minerals and rare earths were recently found. He told the politicians that France must move fast into Central Africa and Southern Africa to take these resources before countries like China and Russia get them. The most dangerous part of his plan is how he wants to deal with African leaders. He said France should not just force its help on Africa. Instead, France should manipulate the situation so that African leaders are the ones asking for help. That way, when French private companies step in, it looks like African leaders invited them, even though France planned the whole thing from the beginning. This meeting shows that the goal has not changed. They still want access to African land, ports, and minerals. They are just swapping out uniformed soldiers for private companies to keep doing the exact same thing without getting caught. Captain Ibrahim Traore, in one of his speeches, said, "These people will never leave. When you sack them in military uniform, they will still come back in different forms without the uniform." And the same thing that Captain Ibrahim Traore said some months ago is exactly what this man is confessing. He talked about how Africa is not one continent or one entity. We are seeing the continent to be one. But in the sight of the people who divided the continent, they see Africa in 4 parts: East, Central, West, and North. And the West and Sahel, they already know their answer. They are doing everything possible in their power to remain here. Why? They can never survive without Africa. They depend on Africa for everything. We must also come together as a people. They see us as 4 different entities, and they have to draw strategies to continue to keep us divided. This has always worked for them. It's a century plan, and it's still working. Look at what they are saying. And this is not the first person who is saying that. There was another Frenchman who talked about how they need to make sure this time around they wouldn't be coming here in the name of helping us, but they'll play the role to force our leaders rush to them for help. And if the people who are chasing us are not tired, should the African be tired? Has they not broken enough and the sun not brighter enough for us to wake up in unity? Why are we still here for people to still control us? For people to still control us? For people to continue to act in unity against us? The people chasing us are never tired. They are never ready to pack their bags and leave. But we have to do everything possible in our power to set ourselves free. It must be freedom. Enough is enough. They keep planning, deciding. If this has failed, this must work. They have people thinking for them 24/7. And the African is busy praying for solution for somebody from the sky to come and help them. And who are they fighting? They are fighting physical beings, but the African do not have the strength. If it is African against African, that's when we have the strength to do whatever. What are your thoughts?